fan. What you gonna do, brother? Oh, yeah! Are you ready? Hey, yo. And that's the bottom line. Shut that control into a nosedive. Woo!
Well, all I can say is someone's been eating their vitamins and saying their prayers.
Life sucks, and then you die.
Strategy my Oklahoma ass.
You're next.
What? Oh, that's the Goldberg taking it out. Goldberg just feared the Rock. That's cheap, plain and simple.
Rest in peace.
Welcome to the JM Report. I'm your host, GoodOlJM. I'm coming to you from my my man cave or JM Studios. I don't know. It's a work in progress. But besides being just Holy Week, as many are celebrating, happy Passover, happy Easter, happy Good Friday. Hope everybody behaved. But as you can imagine, the craziness in the world, at least as a few days ago, was not getting any better, which unfortunately on my end forced CSB Studios to shut down entirely, even though it was already running at limited capacity. And with that said and out of the way, I was heavily debating whether or not to have a JM Report at all. But at the same time, I've been gaining some momentum social media-wise, and the last thing I want to do is disappoint my loyal fan base, my loyal listeners, and also the fact, well, it was a holiday weekend as well, and can't expect everybody to work on holidays. I've done it before, and depending what time of the year it is, it's not always a walk in the park because it's more responsibilities and sometimes even less people. But no worries, my fellow JMers. Well, that's another working title. But I'm here a week after WrestleMania 36. To say it was unique is an understatement, despite a lot of great stuff that took place, a lot of great matches, a lot of unique ideas as well. It was divided into 2 nights, and you can imagine if it was held under the original date of April 5th, and adding the timelines of both shows this past week, or last weekend, I should say, we're looking at over 8 hours, maybe a 9-hour show. And to be honest, would you be all surprised if something like that had occurred, if things were more or less normal, and taking place at Reverend James Stadium as originally scheduled. But I'm just going to run down quickly through the results and give my quick opinion about each one. And as my eyes are irritating here, it's going to be a long night. It's almost midnight, actually, that I'm doing this recording and about to post it up. So at least you got something to look forward to Monday morning for those who are staying home, staying safe at home, or if you're self-quarantined. But enough about that. Let's get right into it. The kickoff show for Saturday, April 4th, WrestleMania 36. There was a bit of confusion because they did announce that there were going to be 2 kickoff matches, and they assumed that they were going to take place on Saturday, but instead it was split into 2. One match for the Saturday kickoff show and the other for Sundays. And everybody was asking what happened to the Natalya match that was supposed to take place, that was advertised, versus Liv Morgan. That took place on Sunday. So instead we ended up having Cesaro defeating Drew Gulick, which I thought was a very physical match. To be honest, a lot of these matches were very physical. A lot of, some might call them work punches, but I think it's a little bit more than that. A lot of stiff-looking forearms and elbows and punches. And had it not been for the, quote, empty arena environment, you probably would not even appreciated the impacts they were making by the sound they were giving off. But here, I thought Cesaro and Gulick looked very well, despite being on the kickoff show. And in the opening bout for WrestleMania 36, Night 1, was Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross taking on the Kabuki Warriors for the women's tag team titles. To be honest, I was not surprised by the outcome. It was almost written on every wall leading up to WrestleMania that Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross would once again regain their women's tag team titles. Regardless, that didn't take away from Asuka and Kairi Sane being extremely entertaining. Not to sound biased or anything, I still don't know what they're saying, but it's entertaining. She's yelling who knows what at who knows who. And the point is, she's very emotional when he does that. Just very passionate and emotional when Asuka says what she says. So we have new women's tag team champions. Elias and King Corbin went one-on-one for reasons, but Elias at least got his payback after falling, 10 feet from that little balcony area, that little crow's nest, or whatever it's been officially called. Seemingly breaking his back, but only he had just athletic tape over his shoulder. Good to know modern medical science still works, and you can walk things off now. But Elias was the victor here over King Corbin. For the women's Raw title, or the Raw women's title, Becky Lynch, surprisingly, and to many, including myself, disappointingly retained her title over Shayna Baszler. Now, I'm not going to be one of those guys that's been all over social media and podcasting that Baszler was buried and this and that, or it took her to go to the main roster to finally, well, she had to drop the title, to begin with, to Rhea Ripley, so that was her first defeat. But yeah, I can understand and agree a little bit with her official first match, one-on-one, that is, on the main roster. Before this, it was the Elimination Chamber. And it's a one-on-one title match versus Becky Lynch, and Shayna is defeated. It wasn't easy. This was also another physical match between the two ladies, and to me, I didn't take it as convincing enough. Like, really, Shayna was dominating for how long as NXT Women's Champion? And Becky, because I guess she's still the man for over a year now, has to still maintain her dominance as well, because when two, as Gorilla Monsoon used to say, it was the irresistible force meeting the immovable object, and there can only be one at the top of the mountain. And I guess creative didn't see it that way, so Becky retains. Shayna is, I guess, someone licking her wounds. Although there was a backstage interview, a quote exclusive Facebook interview, that she's not done quite yet, so we'll see where that goes. Sami Zayn defeated and retained his Intercontinental title over Daniel Bryan. Very slow pace, very slow start, I should say, for a match that many thought it was a dream match in the making for years, long before both men even joined WWE. Unfortunately, I didn't see it as a big deal because it failed to deliver the hype, even though it had a couple of weeks of development. But Sami Zayn, of course, with his cronies of Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura ringside. Gulick was knocked out of action towards the end of the match, so this allowed Bryan to be distracted and Sami Zayn with the roll-out victory. In one of the most confusing matches ever, and you know how WWE likes to brag about the first this, first that, first ever, anything. For me, this was, at least in the histories and for as long as I've been watching pro wrestling, I've never seen a one-on-one triple threat match, a ladder match on top of that, for tag team titles. So it's been speculated for days leading up to Mania that The Miz was medically unclear. No relations to what's been going on in the world, but that it was unclear and could not compete. So what do you do? And I like, between this match and the Universal title match, and I mentioned last week that night's SmackDown was the last opportunity for them to explain the changes. Nope. It said Roman Reigns out, Strowman is in, with no rhyme or reason, as if he was just picked out of a hat or something. And this was no different. Miz is out. And it was even mentioned during the kickoff panel. Miz is out, and Morrison will go on by himself to defend the tag team titles. Let that sink in for a second. One man defending tag team titles. It's been done before, but not at this capacity, where the the opponents or the challengers would say beat up another member of their opponents, you know, in backstage or in a locker room, and then that partner goes on solo. At least that would make sense. But Miz is out. Nobody bothered to raise their hands as to why, but we knew because we knew the secret. This little jab there for those who know what I'm talking about. Very physical, as I mentioned. All these matches are very, very entertaining. I thought the innovation of Morrison, which he's brought to the table many times, but ever since he included the hardcore style, so to speak, not the hardcore wrestling, but the gymnastic version of doing aerobics and flips out in the open world. Kind of, I believe it was inspired by Bruce Lee to have your body to be like water and flow with it and use any and all obstacles in your surrounding area, such as the jungle gyms at the park or handball court or whatnot. So basically, hardcore. And Morrison seems to have, I want to say, perfected that style where he literally walks tightrope across the top rope during the match, and almost at the time was able to pull down the belts hanging over the ring, but it was a little bit too far off because he was standing in the corner where the ladder was set up. It was Jimmy Uso of the Uso brothers who was chosen for the battle, and at one point he was standing on the same corner where Morrison eventually will stand on, and he gets literally tossed off the top rope to the outside of the ring. And if you go back and notice, there's a jump cut. So I guess they needed time to remove the crash pad and then put Jimmy back in place and pretend that he's broken. In the meantime, Kofi Kingston would have one of his better nights, actually, making the most of it, being not a tag team match. And he had a few licks in as well. But at the end, I thought, I'll give him this, I thought the ending was it was different. Not too creative because you saw it coming, but all three men were on top of the ladder. It was only Kofi and Jimmy Uso, that were nailing John Morrison, but Morrison was the only one holding on to the title belts. And when they both delivered, Kingston and Uso, when they both delivered double headbutts, Morrison gets knocked off the ladder, falls onto a bridge ladder that was set up earlier on in the match. And as he falls, he takes with him the tag team titles and retains officially with himself and The Miz. And that was that. Thanks for coming, guys. Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins had a bit of a clinic. The original ending saw Kevin Owens win by disqualification as Seth Rollins would use the ring bell to hit Kevin Owens over the head right in front of the referee. Calls for the bell, but had to claim it back from Rollins to actually ring it. So as Rollins is leaving, Owens gets on a microphone and basically calling Rollins a bitch, a coward. You claim who you say you are, but here you are walking away from a fight that clearly is not finished. So he duped him back into a match when at this time anything goes. And the match saw the ending where right next to the broadcast table, actually right behind the broadcast table, is the infamous WrestleMania sign that everybody will point to at every Raw, every SmackDown, every pay-per-view before actual WrestleMania that they point at, was hovering off the ceiling right behind the commentators for the night. So we have Seth Rollins laid out on a commentating table. Owens seems to have disappeared for a second, but there was only one way there's only one direction he could have gone, and that's him actually climbing to the top of the sign, and there was an elbow drop. So after they were selling, which seemed like forever, finally got him back into the ring. Owens delivers a stunner and gets the 1-2-3 count over Seth Rollins, and my understanding is this feud is far from over. In your semi-main event saw the Universal Championship being defended by Goldberg versus Braun Strowman. Well, there was a lot of controversy. That word gets thrown around a lot, especially in pro wrestling, but sometimes it even loses meaning. Sometimes it doesn't even fit the narrative. But a couple of stories broke out after the fact, after WrestleMania. One of the reasons why Goldberg became champion to begin with after defeating The Fiend over at Super Showdown is that he changed the finish moments before the match actually took place. Bray Wyatt essentially agreed because Goldberg needs to be and wants to be looked at as a hero to all the children around the world. It's a nice gesture, but wait to the last minute to make that change, much less bring it up on that side of the world when everything was developed and mentioned stateside. And he knew what the finish was going to be. It was Wyatt got scheduled, at least rumored, to face Roman Reigns before those changes took place. But I'll say this much, again, nice gesture by Goldberg. Think of the kids and whatnot, because that is the demographic that they're going for nowadays. But you know what? Even heroes fall, fiction or not. But here, this match, to no surprise, those who have seen Goldberg matches, especially in his later runs in WWE, 2-3 minutes, and that's being nice. But these guys seem to have walked in with their special moves already, the special move meters already filled up, because all we saw was spears and power slams. And Strowman ended up winning the title over Goldberg with the 4th, maybe the 5th running power slam, and gets the 3 count, wins clean. Strowman is your new Universal Champion. I'm hoping he doesn't become a transitional champion, as we found out this past week on Smackdown. But the story is, as far as Goldberg goes, that was his last gig. That was his last deal with his recent WWE contract. I mean, things could change later on, but for now, he did his job. He can do whatever he wants now elsewhere that's pro wrestling related. And life goes on. In your main event for night 1, and there were a lot of questions even leading up and during the match, but it was the Boneyard match that AJ Styles set up to take on the Undertaker. And sure enough, we got at least one of the answers everyone was asking for. Is Biker Taker going to return? Is the American Badass going to return? According to Mark Calloway, yes and no. He did a recent interview. It was on Instagram. I don't know if anyone caught it. Just a couple of days ago. It was out in Texas. He and 2 other guys, I couldn't catch their names because their background was the same color as the font of their names, which is all white, and I couldn't really make it out. But regardless, I was able to chime in on the live interview and happened to catch Taker explaining after he was asked a question about the American Badass character. And he says, well, basically, he was trying to mesh the Undertaker character and the American Badass character, which he kind of did when he returned to WrestleMania 20, but not as detailed and not as more putting more effort into it as he did now. And that's the kind of character we expect to stay and see more of later on whenever Taker decides to return. But the match itself clearly made for cinematic reasons, and it worked to this advantage. There were a lot of spots that I don't think could have been pulled off if it was shot, I guess, live, if you want to look at it from that perspective. But yeah, it did look like at times a thriller movie or slasher movie at some points, even Michael Myers-ish or Jason Voorhees-ish kind of thing. And it was stock Styles at the top of a barn. So the graveyard is basically a cemetery / barnyard / boneyard. And my only nitpick was how they revealed the OC, Gallows and Anderson. They said, "Hey, Taker," or whatever they said, and Taker stops beating up Styles for a second. He looks up and turns, and they're just standing there. Where the hell did he come from? So they dropped these essential doors or walls to their garage, and there were a bunch of druids, I guess. There were about 10 of them, and they ganged up on Taker, and of course, one by one, he takes them out. He ends up taking out both OC members, while Styles is trying to get away, climbing up to the roof of the barn. And that's where things didn't start working out for Styles from that moment on. Taker chokeslams him off the roof to a wooden pallet back on the ground. At this point, we find out that Taker and Styles improvised a lot of their slogans, a lot of their dialogue as after the match was over, there was a lot of behind-the-scenes photos and short clips of how the Boneyard match was put together, and I thought it paid off. A little bit behind-the-scenes trivia there, and I can appreciate that. So Taker gave Styles an opportunity to apologize. He kind of did, and he just drops him into the open grave, drops tons of dirt, and the match is over. Funny thing is, there was no referee in sight. But we got to assume that because it was also a buried alive match, Styles loses because having all that ton of dirt dropped on him. And the coolest part was when Taker walks away, he reveals that the tombstone that was there was already had AJ Styles' name. It was just covered up in this piece of tarp. Gets on his bike. He does his fist salute. There's pyro going off in the background and laser lights. You see his symbol go off. And he rides off into not the sunset, I guess the moonlight, into his next fight. And we get one last glimpse of not AJ Styles, but a mannequin hand, which was also seen in the behind-the-scenes photos, wearing one of his gloves, sticking out of the grave as if, like, I'm not dead. So that was night one. We get into night two, and this is where the kickoff match for Natalya and Liv Morgan took place. Surprisingly, Liv Morgan took the victory over Natalya. I guess there are only so many WrestleMania moments that Natalya can have. Let's start giving some to Liv Morgan, although nothing's been developed as far as any kind of storylines moving forward. And I'll get into that a little bit later on as far as where Raw and SmackDown's going to go as far as broadcasting the shows from now on, or at least in the next few weeks. But night two of WrestleMania 36 opened up with the NXT Women's Championship match. First time ever that the NXT Women's title was defended at a WrestleMania. Charlotte Flair challenging Rhea Ripley. Man, these women, they delivered. Probably one of the best matches of the night, or both nights, I should say. And when it came to selling, Rhea Ripley was selling as if there was like a mass murder going on behind the curtains. If you're walking by or through the Performance Center while this was being taped and you're hearing Rhea Ripley screaming bloody murder, you would think there was an actual crime being committed behind those curtains. But Rhea Ripley sold her leg injury, which led to the figure eight and tapping out. Rhea Ripley tapped out and dropped the NXT Women's title back to Charlotte Flair. Now, there was speculation, and I shared this over with the Chokeslam report with the Ultimate One back this past Monday when I checked it out over at the Ultimate One YouTube channel. And I was his special guest, and we talked about this match in particular. Well, there were stories, and I mentioned this as well here on my GM report about Vince McMahon owing Charlotte a favor for all of her contributions, and that she was possibly asking for a title shot, allegedly, sometime real soon. So hence why she won the Women's Royal Rumble this year. There might have been more to it as how and why Ripley dropped the title. And it was the next 24 hours, 36 hours that apparently Rhea Ripley's working visa expired and that she had to go back to Australia to renew it. And then during the week, we come to find out that Rhea Ripley was still in Orlando and debunked any of those reports, any of those rumors saying that her working visa had expired. And no, that was all part of the original plan and booking of the match. Besides showing some clips and highlights of the match on this week's NXT show, but no mention about Rhea Ripley ever returning for a title shot or getting a rematch. Instead, we had Io Shirai winning the 6-women ladder match to determine the number one contender. That should be a great match as well. Io Shirai, Charlotte Flair for the women's NXT title. Aleister Black and Bobby Lashley, someone who was also rumored to have missed Mania because of self-quarantine, actually showed up. Lashley did, along with Lana, and match was great. Typical David versus Goliath. Lashley dominated most of the match and proving how strong he was. Aleister would get a few licks in, but it wasn't until Lana, who apparently wasn't satisfied with the dominant performance that Lashley was given, and was telling him to spear him again, Aleister Black, that is. And upon doing so, caused a distraction. And out of nowhere came Black Mass kick to the face, and out goes Lashley. So I was glad to see that they were protecting that move, that finishing move of Black Mass from Alistair. I mean, besides Sweet Chin music, and now everybody's just overselling that move. The next best thing is a spinning back kick to the opponent's jaw or chin and knocking the hell out of him. Then we get probably one of the best payoffs in recent memory. Otis and Dolph Ziggler. We found out that it was Sonya Deville and Dolph Ziggler in cahoots ever since, actually much sooner than Valentine's Day this year. Still don't know why exactly, but we just know what transpired and what took place, that the messages exchanged between Otis and Mandy Rose, the ones that we'll find out to be deleted, was all because of Sonya. And that she conspired with Ziggler to just have these people's career and lives ruined because they shouldn't be together. Mm-hmm. So that was revealed last week on SmackDown. In the match itself, Otis was on a mission to get his hands on Ziggler in any way possible. And Ziggler had Sonya Deville in his corner. Mandy didn't show up too much later after Deville caused more than one distraction, and that was all that she could take, smacking the taste out of Deville's mouth. Mandy, in return, causes a distraction for Ziggler, and here came Otis to roll up Ziggler to get the win. And too bad this could not have taken place in front of the audience at Raymond James Stadium. But at least we had social media, and a lot of people responded positively for it, that Otis finally got to kiss the girl. Picked her up, carried her around, and laid a nice little wet one. And that's all that we needed to see. So kudos to Otis. He got to win the fight, got his payback, and he got to win the girl. In this case, Mandy. Many guys, I'm sure, were jealous. But life goes on. The last man standing match. Let me get this out of the way first. Edge and Randy Orton started off well. They literally gave us a tour around the entire, or if not most, of the Performance Center. Now, I also mentioned this to the Ultimate One, that if you go to the Performance Center website, they do offer tours to the public. Obviously not right now, but eventually they'll do it again. And if I'm not mistaken, a tour per person can cost anywhere up to $2,000. $2,000 for a tour of the Performance Center. And that's not even if you're planning to apply to train to be a wrestler. But hey, you know what? We got a freebie this time, or at least freebie enough if you're not already subscribing to the network or paying $60 on pay-per-view. The match was too long. For something like this, I thought less would have been a lot more. Had a just finished up right after the cameraman was knocked down, which was another edit, by the way, another jump cut. Maybe give it another couple of more minutes and just have Edge go over Randy Orton as he ended up doing on top of an 18-wheeler. And of course, yes, we still ended up getting a cameo from the reenactment of the Benoit tragedy. Ironically, earlier in the week, Vice aired the Dark Side of the Ring, the Chris Benoit story. And we all read, and there was a reenactment, not fully detailed, but a reenactment of how he took his own life in the gym by setting up the weights and releasing this lever and basically causing it to break his neck. How and why you would do something like that, and let's not be naive, people. It was deliberate, it was intentional, it was kept in. And of course, you know who greenlighted it to have it air. But didn't cause that much of a fuss, but a lot of people pointed it out. And I think from that point on, regardless if the match lasted another 5 or 20 minutes, that's what they were talking most about that match. That one particular spot, that one particular moment in the gym. It is what it is, folks. You let me know. Street Profits retain over the last-minute put-together tag team of Angel Garza and Austin Theory. And there was a bit of a run-in. Zelina Vega, again, it's like all the women in both nights were trying to do all these interferences and distractions. Anyway, so Zelina tried to, she did actually distract the Street Profits, and but Bianca Bella couldn't take it anymore, and she runs down, chases out Zelina, and this was enough to distract the challengers and have the Street Profits retain their titles, that being the Raw Tag Team titles. Bayley would retain her SmackDown title in a 5-women fatal 5-way match that had Sasha Banks, Tamina. No love for Tamina, by the way. Lacey Evans and Naomi. Everybody assumed that it would come down to Sasha Banks and Bayley, but nope, that was not the case. It ended up being Lacey Evans. And Sasha Banks, who was already eliminated, came back to cause yet another distraction, or at least interfered in this case, to give Bayley the win and retain the title. So that story is still being written moving forward. In your semi-main event, interesting twist here, as you had a title match as a semi-main event the night before, but this time it was yet another cinematic match as your semi-main event on night 2 of the Firefly Funhouse match. What the hell was it? I mean, for all I know, it could have taken place on a rundown version of Mr. Rogers' set, but no. I mean, that's where it began. Cena comes out to the ring being introduced as normal, and by the magic of teleportation, ends up in the Firefly Funhouse. All the puppets are taunting Cena, telling him that that Bray Wyatt went through the door behind him, and we get yet another. Well, it was teleportation / time travel / alternate universes, and considering who Bray Wyatt is now, character-wise, and the Fiend, it fit, and I enjoyed the hell out of it, even though there wasn't no wrestling whatsoever, not even a headlock, and that's saying a lot in a John Cena match. So we teleport back to the debut of Cena on SmackDown back in 2002, only this time Bray Wyatt was playing the role of Kurt Angle, and almost line for line reenacted that moment of Angle asking who Cena was, and is he man enough to go one-on-one with Kurt Angle, and what does he bring to the table, and that being ruthless aggression. So Cena wasn't able to touch Wyatt there, so we get jump cut somewhere else, and we go back in time to the 80s for a promo on Saturday night's main event, on a Sunday, by the way, where Wyatt and Cena were going to team up, but this was only to exhaust Cena a little bit more as he was lifting these free weights nonstop, and he couldn't pick up his arms anymore. He couldn't swing anymore. So jump cut to well, not jump cut. We time travel, teleport, alternate universe, whatever, to an episode of WCW Monday Nitro, where now Bray Wyatt is playing the role of Eric Bischoff, leather jacket and everything, and we see what could have been if Cena joined the NWO. Nice touch, because I was a little confused. Wait a minute, Cena would have joined the NWO back in, this must have been, this particular episode of Nitro had to have been 96, maybe 97. And I was expecting, okay, if this was Cena, maybe we would have still seen him in his jean shorts. But nope, it was actually long blue jeans, an NWO shirt, NWO baseball cap, a replica NWO WCW Championship belt, trying to portray Hollywood Hulk Hogan, and okay, I appreciate that. I as a fan appreciated that detail. I go, oh, what if? And we finally get just Cena in the ring as modern day Cena, confused as all hell, trying to talk down to Bray Wyatt, and the puppetry up here, only to have the Fiend show up from behind, apply the mandible claw, deliver Sister Abigail. The Fiend goes for the cover, and Bray Wyatt makes the 3 count somehow. Again, this match had no referee, just like the Boneyard match, and Fiend wins, I think. Fiend stands over the body of Cena, and Cena just puffs into midair. So was this the last hurrah? Is this the last time you're going to see Cena? Well, we can't say in the middle of the ring at a WWE event because we don't know where the hell we were here with the Firefly Funhouse. I mean, this could have been some janitor's basement for all we know. But Cena's gone for now. And Wyatt prevails. And as of this past Friday night, he wants his Universal title back. So I hope they don't screw this up. But the creative team here, they have a lot to work with as far as source material. As most, if not all of you know, Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman were once a part of the Wyatt family. Strowman was the black sheep, the heavy guns, so to speak. And there was a lot of history there, similar how they did with Daniel Bryan, similar how they did with John Cena. So now there's a title involved. I mean, sure, they had the title match with Bryan and Fiend at the Royal Rumble, but that could have gone only one way. But the backstory and the lead up and the video package helped a lot, and both guys still delivered in that strap match. With Cena, well, you had to go back 6 years, and even a shorter amount of time. But at least that was a lot of 6 years full build up, and that's how that worked. So let's keep up that momentum, guys, and creative, and hopefully not screw this up with the backstory between Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt the Fiend. So that was WrestleMania 36, as unique and different as it was. Moving forward with WrestleMania events, I mean, we would all like to think and hope that by this time next year, this craziness is over and that WrestleMania in Los Angeles in 2021 can go on without any issues. And there are, well, not really rumors, but there's been a lot of noise, at least out here in my neck of the woods, that possibly, because of what happened with this year's Mania, that for WrestleMania 38 in 2022, Tampa Bay could once again be in the lead to claim another WrestleMania event and also to be held at Raymond James Stadium to make up for what happened. Obviously, it cannot happen next year because Mania 37 is already booked in LA, so why not? And they usually try to announce a year in advance, so it's no surprise. And there might have been talks about maybe Chicago or New York again, maybe even Texas for WrestleMania 38, 39. But when those stories came out, it was just possibilities. They were all speculations. I'm all for it personally, but to rule it out as a possibility, I mean, I wouldn't. But again, only time will tell. So now that WrestleMania 36 is in the books, I'm not going to cover Raw and SmackDown or NXT at this point because there was just too many WrestleMania rematches. Way too many WrestleMania rematches. And almost bit by bit the same outcome and the same spots. So I'm not going to bother with it. But there have been a lot of different types of stories throughout the week. For example, here, Rey Mysterio, who was scheduled to face Andrade, or at least rumored was, to face Andrade for the U.S. title at Mania. Turns out both guys didn't end up showing. And it was first believed that Mysterio could not make it regardless because he was self-quarantined in California about a month ago, about 3 weeks ago. But he cleared the airways, talking to Fox Sports in Mexico. Because of the ongoing craziness, several superstars missed WWE's biggest event. Names like Roman Reigns, but at least he confirmed that. Dana Brooke, but still showed up post-Mania tapings. Go figure, but don't matter. Miz, of course. Lashley, but again, he still showed up. And, of course, Rey Mysterio. So even though Reigns confirmed his absence, Mysterio said although he wasn't showing any symptoms, he was still feeling a bit under the weather, just as the TV tapings were taking place, and he opted to stay at home. WWE agreed, and he clarified that the doctors from WWE supported his decision. And plus, Mysterio speculated that he was feeling ill due to traveling from Orlando to San Diego. And the weather itself might have played a role as well. I mean, it's been crazy. Like today, we had nearly 95-degree weather compared to yesterday's 74, 75. So, yeah, it jumps around. And you try to adapt to one set of weather, and then another one comes up the next day, and either you're cooler or you're hotter. I mean, I'm trying here, Mother Nature, but Jeff Hardy was scheduled to appear in a North Carolina courtroom this past week, but because of the global circumstances, as is put by PW Insider, Hardy will now have to reschedule. And that date is now, the new date is now May 11th. He needs to answer to his recent DWI arrest, despite returning to WWE last month in a winning effort on Smackdown. And he addressed his issues on an episode of Backstage, I believe, 2 weeks ago. So he admits to his wrongdoing. He's aware of what's happening now as far as what he needs to do, and that he's attended rehabilitation to address his substance abuse, such as drinking too much. And here's the hoping. I mean, Jeff Hardy, his contract was extended after his brother's expired, at least for the rest of the year, my understanding. Was it the rest of the year? But he'll be around for a while. And if this would be his last hurrah with WWE, hopefully he can go out swinging, unlike one of his last departures, feuding with CM Punk, and just basically took his tail between his legs and took off after having a feud with Punk that involved alcoholism. So that was only about 10 years ago. Well, I mentioned that, like, among other changes that's being affected with the craziness, and yes, I'm sticking to that description, the craziness around the world, such as besides what's going on in the world of pro wrestling. But if you haven't noticed, also the movie theater business has been affected as well. They attempted in the beginning to narrow down ticket sales, and then became a limited amount of sales, then there was a limited amount of hours that they'll be open until they just eventually shut down. So what's to become of these movies that were scheduled to debut during spring and summertime? Well, most took to removing or rescheduling their release dates up to a year. So those who are waiting for Fast 9 or Fast Furious 9 or whatever it's going to be called, with John Cena, that's until next year, folks. Black Widow was taken down entirely without any scheduled release date or rescheduled release date. And then there is My Spy with Batista. And honestly, I was really looking forward to this one. It looks to be a little bit funnier than Stuber from last year. So despite having a few limited runs in Canada before the craziness took place, and it came time to schedule to have released in the States, that idea was scrapped. And instead, it's going to go straight to Amazon Prime. As of right now, there's no official release date on that, but My Spy was originally scheduled to appear, not appear, but debut in the theaters this past Friday. So those Batista fans, including myself, were denied such movie release. So now we have to wait a little bit longer and keep an eye on whenever Amazon Prime decides to release it. My understanding is you can pre-order it digitally for about $19.99. So there's a cheap plug for Prime Video Cinema. You're welcome. Sponsor? Anyway. Of course, I mentioned the Rhea Ripley story, but probably one of the biggest stories that happened this past Friday was the release of the Revival. Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder finally released from their contracts from WWE as of Friday morning. And they released a statement, WWE did. Effective today, Friday, April 10th, 2020, WWE and the Revival have agreed on their immediate release from WWE. We wish them all the best in their future endeavors. Oh, there goes those words again. You know there's no open door anytime soon once you hear good luck in your future endeavors. That means get out and don't come back anytime soon. Or maybe you come back with a bouquet of flowers for Vince. I don't know what he's into nowadays. Make sure you bring a nice 12-pack of water because that's all he drinks. At least that's what I think he does. According to Fightful.com, the Revival have been asking for the release several times for the past 2 years. And they wanted to make a split, on a reasonable split from WWE. Dawson's contract was set to expire originally in April. I guess they couldn't wait. Well, later on in the month of April. Wilder's was set to expire in June because there was added time to his contract due to a knee injury earlier on. But then Ryan Satin chimed in, adding more to the report. The team is free to work whenever they choose because they do not have the no-compete clause. Hence why the terminology was used in the statement from WWE, their immediate release. Similar to Matt Hardy, well, he allowed his contract to expire. That's one way to not get your 90-day no-compete clause. Unless they sign separately. Let me rephrase that. They sign not an extension, but once your contract expires, it usually already has that language in writing, and that you cannot work for 90 days for another company. One or two things could have happened here because of what's going on with the craziness. Like, well, you're going to keep these guys out of work for 90 days, really? I mean, most, if not all of independent wrestlers are not getting paid unless they have those big contracts with those companies. Or they just agree, like, hey, listen, I haven't been working Matt Hardy. In Matt Hardy's case, he hasn't been working much unless it was the last 2 to 3 weeks with that little angle we had with Randy Orton, basically taking out Matt Hardy out of the WWE entirely. So what was left for him to do? I jumped over to AEW. I'm not aware of the details of his contract with them, but from what I heard, it's nice, to say the least. And in the case of the Revival, well, just like Satin pointed out, you don't need to read any more than say immediate release and that you can work anywhere you want. Now, because it was a holiday weekend, I would assume any and all negotiations or talks with anyone, and probably the most obvious company to talk to now will be AEW, and they will fit right in there. The Revival will. Of course, they can't be called the Revival anymore, so we'll see what they'll call themselves at that point in time. Hell, they'll probably show up, or at least they'll start showing up on AEW social media networks. So let's keep an eye on that. The other big news, and I was very disappointed. I was saying to myself, how and why was this even allowed? Everyone else was either postponing it or canceling the rest of the seasons, and we'll see you next year. But for the second time in its history, the XFL pulled the plug. They are no more. News broke this past Friday as well. According to ESPN, it was just decided, and massive layoffs from talent to office workers to executives, all gone. XFL 2.0 is now done. I don't think there's going to be a second, or I'm sorry, I don't think there's going to be a third attempt at this. If there is, you have lost any and all faith in the fans that gave it the second chance because you promised of the differences, because of the changes that were made. They were getting to it. They were getting into it. Hell, I was getting into it, despite my home team of the Vipers having at one point 0-4 record. But you know what? It brought out the fans. It wasn't selling out the stadiums, but it was bringing out fans. I'm going to speculate here because there's another story that's out there. I don't know all the details other than what the headlines say and how many different sources basically saying the same story but using different words and terminology. So not that I'm discrediting them or anything, but I rather hold off to get the full story as that continues to develop. But it has to do with a recent buyout of WWE stock. McMahon paying out of his pocket to his talent. There isn't much or any revenue coming in from sponsors or advertisement, because especially recently when you have just taped shows and are not live, because when you're live and you're sponsoring Coke or toys, or Coke as in the soda, people relax, toys and beer and other types of refreshments or appliances or tools or whatever you normally want to watch on a wrestling program, they're not there anymore, if you noticed. At least not any new ones. Now they're being replaced by what's going on with the craziness world. To support restaurants, which I do strongly get behind, support your local restaurants, support your medical field workers, nurses, and doctors. Those are all the commercials you're seeing now. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if you're Vince or WWE, like, well, that's not helping our paychecks now, is it? So what do? I'll pay out of my pocket. Now, again, this is all speculation, folks, so don't take my word for it. But if that's the case, and Vince realized, holy crap, I took out too much out of my wallet, now I can't pay to afford XFL people. If it makes sense, give this audio a thumbs up. But if not, then leave your angry and negative comments down below. But for all I know, I hope I'm reading too much into it. But when it comes to money like this, and it's a lot of money, folks, we're talking millions of dollars here. You got to make unfortunate sacrifices, and in this case, people losing their jobs, or if you're a player, basically losing your career. So I'll leave it at that, but it doesn't change the fact that the XFL is now gone, and more than likely no chance, because they promised once they made the announcement that we'll return in 2021, that the remaining 2020 season has been postponed and or canceled, and will return. But every sport outlet is saying they ended their story by saying with no plans to return in 2021. Too bad this could have been saved for an April Fool's joke, but it's real, it's reality, and it sucks. If they're going to do XFL 3.0, well, they better start broadcasting from high school gyms or something, because they lost, in my opinion, all faith in the fans, all their confidence, and more than likely their support. So just like the original XFL run and this run, if you bought any merchandise or have any merchandise with XFL names on it or team logos or whatnot, consider them antiques now. I have a little replica Nerf size Viper football somewhere hanging in one of my shelves. Yeah, I'm more likely gonna have that displayed behind a glass case real soon, to avoid having it collect dust. Ronda Rousey made the news as well, and not all for the good reasons. Basically saying the reason why she quit and never returned to WWE is because of these ungrateful wrestling fans. I could have sworn last I checked, she left after a year when her deal was up, was still open for her to return and to possibly have her own family. Well, neither one happened, but Ronda was on the Talking on the Wild Ride with Steve-O podcast, and saying that she would not return to a full-time schedule, and claimed that her WWE schedule at the time meant that she was only going to be home 1 day and a half each week. that it wasn't worth the sacrifice considering the state of the so-called WWE universe, and this is when she really let us have it, folks. That and by the way, this JM report was never meant for children, so cover your ears, you innocent ones. And I quote Ronda Rousey, but instead spending my time and my energy on a bunch of fucking ungrateful fans that didn't even appreciate me. Well, I want to look at it as Ronda Rousey, the character, not Ronda Rousey, the person. But then again, it's hard to tell the difference between the two. But that was more the character Rousey saying this. Ungrateful, yeah. What does your bank account look like now? But yeah, ungrateful that a lot of your bank account, especially in the past year or so, came from me. For instance, I have a Ronda shirt. She got a majority of that income, you know, her part of her intake, her cut of that price tag. There were replica Ronda gloves, replica kilts, hell, even replica jackets, which I don't think lasted too long. Her likeness, her name, all over the place. So, and those little girls that looked up to you. So if she's looking at the part of her career when she was a heel, well, blame that on creative. Who told them to turn you heel? Who told them to? And the thing is that a lot of people gave flack to Ronda Rousey for. She smiled too much. Ronda Rousey, when it, you know, being an MMA fighter and, you know, legit badass, has one of the most prettiest smiles I've seen in a woman coming from that type of background, and then became a pro wrestler for a year. The world was handed to her on a silver platter, so to speak, when she joined WWE, and she was pushed to the moon and back. Was undefeated for a year in WWE. I'll say this: when she lost her first UFC fight to Holly Holmes, you know, her frame of mind then is not matching what it is now, except just more lashing out at the quote fans. But you know, it is what it is. I'm gonna look at it as Ronda was in character when she said that. I mean, how and why would you even think that? Especially how the fans accepted you in, as heavily rumored as it was at the time, a couple of years ago when you debuted at the Royal Rumble, and going on a hell of a ride. So I would say drop the act, Ronda. No one believes it, but we probably won't see her anytime soon. There were no words or meeting set up between her and WWE having to return or having negotiations to return. But doors, I'm sure, are wide open, and she can make a comeback whenever she wants to. She's still young enough. She's still healthy enough. But if she's still planning to have a family anytime soon, those ideas are put on hold. Moving on, just a couple of more stories here. WWE is getting a lot of flack from deciding to go live once again with Raw and Smackdown and NXT. Now, there are a couple of sources here that I had to stitch together, and they all basically say the same thing, leading to what I'm about to say here. So if I can just find that little thing, okay. So WWE right now is on the defense of supporting their decision to continue filming the shows live. In a statement that was given to ESPN, and it was revealed that WWE will resume live television shows beginning this week. Starting off with Raw, despite Florida, the entire state of Florida is, well, it's under quarantine order, stay-at-home order. It's not a lockdown, because we're still allowed to go outside and do essential things. So Raw and SmackDown are expected to go live this week from the Performance Center, while NXT is expected to go live from Full Sail University. And that's in Winter Park, by the way. So in a statement, WWE said, "We believe it is now more important than ever to provide people with a diversion from these hard times. We are producing content on a closed set with only essential personnel in attendance following appropriate guidelines while taking additional precautions to ensure the healthy and wellness of our performers and staff. As a brand that we have been woven into a fabric of society, WWE and its superstars bring families together and deliver a sense of hope, determination, and perseverance. Good Lord, I can't read today. You know what? It's a nice gesture. It really is. But that kind of contradicts what happened over the weekend, that there was an unnamed WWE talent or staff member or member of the roster, depending who you ask, depending who you believe. But apparently it does not change the fact that one of their own has fallen ill to the craziness that's been going on. And WWE even confirmed, and their confirmation, they call it, that an on-screen talent that is not a member of their roster has tested positive. The disease that has locked down the world in the last month, they contracted the virus after going out to dinner with friends to work in the healthcare industry. So that's the short version of it. Since then, said ill staff member or talent, on-screen talent member, has been sent home, and apparently their significant other has also been infected. That news broke in the past 24 to 36 hours, depending what time I'm uploading this. And they go back to their first statement about going back to live TV, basically going against the Florida mandate to stay home. Now, for the record, I'm not bashing only WWE. You see how I'm setting that up before it happens? Because that would also include AEW, Impact Wrestling, or any other company that involves pro wrestling, which just seems to be the only sport right now that's available for current content. Not always live, but they're providing new content on television, on streaming, on demand, social media, what have you. And I appreciate where they're coming from, WWE in this case, to provide a distraction, okay, to get your mind off things, okay, at least for those 2 or 3 hours that you're watching their programming. There's no official word as to when exactly. I mean, they talk about, this person now went out to dinner and then came back, whatever. That's their take. But unless they have one of their WWE doctors performing these same tests that you do now at these drive-through open fields around the country, there's really no way to determine exactly when and where this person contracted that virus. So I'm not even going to give them the benefit of the doubt on that. Was it in between or during the tapings of WrestleMania or Raw and Smackdown for the past couple of weeks? Was it during these tapings that are coming up? So I mentioned last week that they had, after WrestleMania, up to 3 weeks worth of tapings. So now that they're deciding, tongue twister, that they are deciding to go back live starting this week, we may never see those original tapings at all. I mean, for all we know, they're gonna basically do them again. Same matches, same concept, same outcome, whatever. Just now it's gonna be live. But I gotta ask, to what degree are you willing to go to provide distractions for us? I don't think no one ever started a petition, for lack of a better term, or started a specific hashtag saying, hey, WWE, do not go away. You are our last resort. You are our last savior when it comes to providing new TV content, because I'm tired of streaming Tiger King. So where's the line drawn here? I don't know. And again, this argument here goes across the board. I'm only saying WWE because as of this time, they're the only ones that provided a statement saying what they're doing besides what they're going to do moving forward. And there was talk also last week that I mentioned that they might take a break. Nope. Moving forward, more live TV. And now this is why I chime in with my own opinion here, because many are speculating that the move is more of a contractual reasoning than anything else, avoiding breach of contracts between USA, Universal, and Fox. Now, according to What Culture, they say that the USA Network side of things on the contract, that the only shows expected to be taped during the year is on the holidays, Christmas and New Year's. If it happens to land Raw on a Monday, that Christmas or New Year's lands on that Monday, well, then it will be pre-taped the day before or over the weekend. But point is, it's pre-taped. And for Fox, well, it's straight through. But I would imagine they have the same ruling that they will pre-tape SmackDown if a holiday lands on that day, and they're expected to take a time off because it's vacation, it's family time, all that. So what I think, in my opinion, that they will be live on certain days and tape the shows the day of, hours before they air it on USA or Fox, similar to what they do when they go to the UK for that tour during the spring, sometimes summer. And we watch it on, for example, Raw on USA. They say they're live, but they're not. Raw had already taken place about 4 or 5 hours earlier in the day, at least in our time zones, or wherever you're watching it from. And that's how you're able to see results right before Raw goes on the air. How did they get them? Because it was live in the UK, but since we're on delay, we get it hours later. So I'm guessing they will probably do something like that, and especially if it means to avoid, quote, breaching contract between Fox and Universal. Time will tell. We shall see. I'm still questioning the safety measures that they're taking. I mean, just because only one person got sick and their partner, or as they put it, their significant other got sick as well, doesn't mean that no one else can either. And yes, there have been survivors. Yes, people have overcome this. But again, to what end? And that goes for AEW, who apparently taped weeks in advance their shows coming out. Same thing with Impact Wrestling. And I believe that includes one of their old pay-per-view events coming up. I'll leave it at that, folks. And that's all I can say. But good to know that they're planning to celebrate 25 years of Triple H. Yay. 2 weeks. Put that on your calendar. Yay. Because that's more important than your fucking safety. I digress. Maybe not. Not at all. So anyway, there it is, folks. GM report for this week. I'm aware that there's a lot more stories out there worthy of mentioning, but I thought these were the more important, besides the results of WrestleMania 36. That will definitely go down in history as one of the most unique ones, to say the least. But other than that, everyone be healthy, be safe, be good, behave. If you're still quarantining, get well soon. I'd like to say once again for everybody to continue celebrating their birthdays, their anniversaries, their special occasions that they can, like they have been. They've been going viral. Everybody doing their part to help others celebrate their special occasions by either driving by their homes and honk their horns, or come out to the windows if you have balconies and start playing instruments or sing along with each other. To me, that's definitely, among other events like that, is what is bringing everyone together and keeping it together. I'd like to offer my condolences for those who have lost anyone dear to them in this craziness. And that hopefully this would all end much sooner than later. So with that said, everyone, again, be safe. If you like what you heard, like this audio. Follow me on social media as it's written in my descriptions, and you can subscribe to the GoodOlJM YouTube channel. And here's till next time.
To open my eyes, leave it all behind. So open your mind and realize that your beautiful world could take my life. And I'm sinking just let me breathe.